There's just something about those chunky metal riffs. This is like meat and potatoes, probably more meat than potatoes. Now, before we get into the lesson, my Patreon supporters, you guys have the tabs and the backing tracks, and hang around till the end of the lesson because we're gonna have our usual guitar chat. All right, guys, let's break down this traditional chunky heavy metal riff. Speaking of chunky, I'm kind of hungry now. Anyway, let's do this lesson first. So I'm going to break this up into 4 parts, but before we do that, I just want you to hear the riff that you're about to learn out in the open, no drums, bass, or any of that. So here we go. Alright, so that first part is pretty simple, okay? We're playing the E power chord, and I'm in standard tuning, by the way. I know most of you guys know that already, but we're playing that E power chord, and that first part of the riff is just based around that E power chord there. First string, open, second string, second fret, right? And here it is slow, just the first part. Now, you hear the palm mutes in there. A lot of times I will palm mute single notes because it sounds a little bit tighter when you do that. For this particular riff, to make it more chunky sounding, I'm actually palm muting the entire power chord, both notes, the open E and that A string second fret. And we start right out of the gate with that palm muting there, okay? Okay, now you'll also hear me palm mute a single note in there. We're going to go through this in detail. And this is a cool thing about these types of riffs where we might palm mute both notes of the power chord some. In certain places, we may only palm mute the single note, and that kind of goes back to getting that cleaner sound, a little bit tighter sound in the riff. So it's kind of like there's a time and place for both. And on that note, no pun intended, okay, the pun's always intended, but I want you to take off with it. If you feel something else just wanting to happen with those hands while you're playing this, hey, go in that direction. We'll talk more about that in our guitar chat at the end, but I just want to encourage you to do that. You may be playing this, you're like, you know what, okay, I like Jason's lesson here, but I've got something that's just in my head, and maybe it even sounds better and cooler. Hey, go with it. Back to the riff. So everything is centered around that E power chord for this first part again, and we're going to be going back and forth between the E and the A string, so that gives it just a little bit more punch as well. So let me slow this down for you, okay? Okay, you already see how we went from palm muting both strings of the power chord to just palm muting the one single string as we're playing the single notes, and again going back and forth between the A and the E string there. Again, this gives the riff just a little bit of variety there, just kind of gives it that bite in my opinion. So let's walk through this. We're going to do this after those 2 palm mutes. That A string second fret, a single note there. Back to the E string, that's going to be a single note, palm muted. Remember, we palm muted the entire power chord first. Now we're just palm muting the E string. Hear the difference? This is both. This is going to be 1. Let's go over that very specific single note pattern. Okay, that right there. And this is simple, only a few notes, but sometimes these little patterns can be tricky, and it might just be because you're not used to playing that specific pattern, okay? It's not a really difficult riff, but sometimes it takes a while to for it to snap, if that makes sense. So we're going back and forth. Every time we go back to that open E string, we palm mute, okay? So A string, back to the E string, A string second fret, back to the E string open. Now open A string to the second fret. Back to the E string, palm muted. Then we hit that power chord and move forward with the palm muting of both of those notes there, okay? One more time, okay? And I know I spent a lot of time on this first part here, but we won't spend as much time over the second pattern and the patterns to come because everything is kind of built around what we just did, okay? So here we go. Alright, so everything that we just did revolving around that E power chord, we're going to do the exact same thing in the second part of this riff, but we're going to apply those strategies to a different power chord. We're going to play this revolving around the F power chord. And let me just play through this part, this little section real quick for you. So everything that we did with the open E string earlier, we're just going to do that with the first fret of the E string. Now the one difference here is we let that power chord ring out. I know when we started this riff, we just started right out of the gate with a palm muting. We're starting with a power chord ringing out this time, then we go right into that single note strategy, the back and forth between the E and the A strings. Again, just playing some different notes. Same strategy, same cadence, we're just playing different notes. So let's go through those. So we're gonna start after we play that power chord. Love when the power chords just ring out in the room here. And hey, it sounds pretty good on the telly too, by the way. I still need to buy this from my buddy. I've been kind of on that borrow to own plan. Brian, dude, I'm gonna give you some money this weekend. All right, we'll catch up. So we're gonna go to that third fret of the A string. That's gonna be our first single note. Then back over to the E string, first fret, palm muted. Then back over to the A string. Remember, we got some back and forth action going here. A string, second fret, then third fret. Palm muting again, that first string, first fret. Then we go right into that power chord again. All right, let's go through this one more time before we go to the next section. Now let's go into the third part of this riff. Then we've got one more part to go over, but I need to back up slightly. There's a little piece of the music that kind of ties the second and third pieces of the riffs together. And let me just play through parts 2 and 3 so you can hear how we tied that in. I was going to cover that in the second riff. To be honest with you, I forgot about it, so I'm covering it now. Here are those two pieces of the music, and you'll hear the G power chord that I just throw in there to tie those pieces of music together to give it just a little bit, I don't know, just something different, okay? Something to kind of spice it up a bit. So what we're doing here is really going from that F power chord to the G power chord really quickly before going into that third part of this riff. So it's kind of like where the one part ends, the other's beginning. It's almost an overlap, if that makes sense, okay? In fact, practice that. See how cool that sounds. And it's pretty fun to play, by the way. It's kind of like a stop and go, if that makes sense. And that's a metal guitar tactic that's used in a lot of different songs. In fact, if you have some songs that that you can name off the top of your head that use that strategy there, hey, throw those in the comments. I'd like to know what those are. But anyway, after we do that, then we go into that third piece of the riff here, which is essentially the exact same thing we've been playing all along. We let the E power chord ring out, and then we go into that single note strategy and so forth. So it's the exact same thing. You guys already know it. Now for the final part of this riff, and this is a fun part. We're going to let the G power chord ring out. We're going to go back to that. Then we've got this cool little single note pattern that we're playing. So let me play this through for you a couple of times, and then we'll go over the notes. Alright, so all we're doing here is we're going to play that G power chord. We're going to let that ring out for a little bit. Then we go into this little pattern here. So there's a little bend, okay? We're starting out on the A string, 5th fret, and we've got a little bend there. Now you can bend it all the way to the next note within that key. I don't quite bend it up that far. I kind of hit somewhere between that next fret, not next note, that next fret, which is an E flat, okay? So this is the D note, okay? A string, 5th fret. That's the note we're bending. So again, you can bend up. That next note within the key is an E. Or again, if you want to just kind of do that little going halfway, like meet me halfway. Wait, that's a Kenny Loggins song. I love that song. It's from that movie. What was the arm wrestling movie? Sylvester Stallone. Meet me halfway. Over the top. That's what it was. Okay. Anyway, let's get back to the lesson, guys. Come on. So you can do like a little half bend, which would be going up to like that E flat. Either way sounds fine. Just play around with it a little bit. I think what I have it in the tabs that my Patreon supporters will get, you're bending that full step. So once we do that little bend there, we're going to go to the 3rd fret, then 2nd fret, back to 3-2, then the 3rd fret of the E string. So let me go through this really slow. Now I do hit a little pinch harmonics in there as well, especially when I'm doing that bend on that A string 5th fret there. If you'd like to learn more about pinch harmonics, I've got an entire guide on that up here, so do check that out if that's something that you struggle with. I think that video really will help you. Alright, let's go through the entire riff real quick together. I'm going to play it at its normal speed so you can hear it in context. Then I will slow it down, okay? And then we'll play it at normal speed once again. And of course, hang around after that because we are going to have our guitar chat. Alright guys, it is time for our guitar chat, but real quick, if you do not have my Metal Riff Master guitar course, make sure you check that out. There is a link in the description of this video, so you can just click on that. It'll tell you all about the course and how that can really help you step up your game when it comes to your rhythm chops. On that note, no pun intended, I am in the middle of making a lead guitar course, so I'm hoping to release that sometime early 2023, so that's going to be coming soon as well. So one of the things I harped on in this video here and throughout the lesson, remember I told you there are going to be a lot of little golden nuggets in here, a lot of little hidden gems, and I hope these little things that we went over help you in writing your own riffs, and that's what I harped on. making it your own. And guys, I talk about this a lot on my channel here, and I don't feel like I can talk about it enough because I think it's the most important thing you can do as a guitar player, especially once you get beyond that beginner level. And hey, if you went through any part of this riff that we played today in this lesson here, if you went through any part of that and you got it, it felt pretty easy, even if it was the first chunky part, you got it, you nailed it, it's like, okay, I got this down. Well, you're on your way, you're on that path to being able to write your own riffs. And guys, I strongly encourage you to do that, because to me, I feel that makes you not only a better guitar player, but a better musician overall. So take these riffs again and just branch out, make them your own. A couple ways you can do that is, hey, try playing this in a different key. For example, what if instead of starting with the E power chord there, what if you started that riff a string over on the A power chord and just played everything a string over? Try that. Let me know how that sounds. Now that's going to give you going from more of that maybe Metallica vibe to maybe sort of the Iron Maiden and Priest and that sort of vibe. You know what I mean? So just little changes like that, and it's going to sound like a completely different riff, all right? Just moving everything one string over. Another thing you can do is just simply add more notes to the riff. I mean, there are a lot of opportunities to add your own flavor in regards to adding other notes to those riffs. Maybe you don't palm mute as much. Maybe you play some more single notes in there instead. Try that. Or hey, if you want to get a little fancy, maybe throw in a hammer-on pull-off or something like that. You know, there's one part where we went from 2-3-2, I think it was on the A string, or 2-3. Well, maybe do a hammer-on pull-off 2-3-2 and just get a little fancy, get a little bit more creative with it. So again, just add your own flavor to those riffs. I want to encourage you guys to do that. Guys, I hope this lesson helped you. If you have any questions, please leave those in the comments below. I do appreciate your support. And guys, until the next video, as always, keep it metal.